Everyone, welcome to the show. My goal is to introduce you to the people who have the tools, systems, mindsets to succeed in business and in life. Today's guest is Angad Guglani. He is one of the most popular guys at Wharton. He's befriended and also gotten the respect of pretty much everyone in school, which is saying a lot. He is the co-founder of Cooper Square Acquisitions, a real estate development company focused on distressed properties in the Philly suburbs. By the age of 24, he had purchased 100 doors. And today, by the age of 27, he has purchased and renovated or holds over 150 homes valued in excess of $20 million without using outside equity capital. He started his entrepreneurial journey in high school, where he used his life savings at the time of $1,500 to buy a watch for his grandfather. And it broke or something like that. We could talk about it in a sec, but he actually sold it for parts, made $1,000 from it. And I think he was hooked on entrepreneurship since then. At 19, he started his residential brokerage firm while studying at NYU, and he was making six figures in the summers, hiring his classmates. He founded Housing for All Camden, a nonprofit partnership with Camden City Councilwoman Shanika Boucher.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Angad was voted most likely to succeed by our Wharton classmates this last year. So very excited to welcome to the show. Everybody welcome Angad.
Patrick, thanks so much. I'm so glad we got to meet throughout Wharton, and it's excited to be here. And you can just keep going with that introduction. We don't have to say anything else.
So awesome. So you showed us a little bit of the property. Can you tell us a little bit more about where we're at right now?
Sure. Yeah. So we're sitting in 4 East Collings in Collingswood. Our office actually in Collingswood. It's about 17 minutes away from Center City, Philadelphia. It's a really cool town. Kind of has had a rebirth in the last 30 years. It has like some of the best cafes, best restaurants, best shopping, probably in the Philly metro area. It's really like up and coming. And so we got this project about a year ago. Unfortunately, we're really backed up with our construction team. So we're still not done just because we move guys around from our different projects. But yeah, we basically are doing a full gut renovation here. Top to bottom, we're keeping the original floors because people like those. Other than that, it's all new sheetrock, plumbing, electrical, new appliances, kitchen, bathroom. It's going to look beautiful if it gets done. But yeah, I'm sure it will. And we're excited to move a new renter in.
Awesome. So you talked about you grew up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then somehow I remember you were, I think the story is you were talking to a friend and he told you about the Camden area and that's how you chose the area.
Yeah. So
what was that like? How did you trust this guy to like kind of be like, okay, I'm going all in on the district that you probably were never in before, right?
Of course. No, it was a big, maybe, I guess when you're younger, you make kind of like blind risks or whatever, take blind risks. It was probably one of those.
Yeah.
But when I was in New York, I started that real estate brokerage business called Off-Campus Apartments, NYC. And I was fortunate. It was a good market. And I was able to make pretty good money as a college kid. And the goal was to be on the other side of the table. Like when you're a broker, it's very transactional. You're kind of living and dying by your commission. And you just are like always in grind mode, like kind of trying to get to the next sale. So like a lot of brokers, like they like, oh my God, I want to be a real estate investor, real estate developer, because like, at that point, you have a little bit of permanence, like you own property, so you know you have residual income coming in. So anyways, that was like kind of the goal of the brokerage business, which was basically just to make enough money so I could get on the investment side of the table. And looked at a bunch of different cities and towns and stuff. I remember I would go on like the PATH train, and go to like all the different stops in Jersey City. Like there was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different stations. And what I noticed was like a lot of the action there had kind of already happened. Prices had risen quite a bit. And this was like 2014, 2015, 2016 time frame.
Right.
And through happenstance, a friend from undergrad was from the Philly area. He's like, you should take a look at Camden, New Jersey. So took like the $5 Chinatown bus over from Chinatown to Chinatown, Philly. And then took a Uber or whatever over to Camden and kind of saw like, wow, you could buy houses for $30,000, $25,000, $15,000, put in $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. You're all in around 50, 60K.
Right.
And you can rent them for like, 12 to 13 to 14 to 1,500 a month. So if you look at that in real estate, we use what's called a cap rate, capitalization rate. It's a pretty simple formula. You basically look at the net income, like kind of the profit you would make before paying your mortgage, on the property over what you have into the property, right? So hypothetically, if you have 100,000 into a property and the property makes you 10,000 a year, that's a 10% cap rate. So at the time in Camden, you could get 17, 18% cap rates.
Right. Crazy high.
Really high. Like, I mean, just imagine that as with basic investment knowledge, the S&P 500 goes up, over 50 years, about 7-8% a year. So imagine making 18% a year.
Right.
Like, that's mind blowing. And keep in mind, at that time in 2016, stuff in New York was trading at 4 cap rates. So like, I was like, wow, this seems really cool. So that was like kind of like the cash flow reason to do it. And then Camden, historically has been a very when it started, it was like a bustling city. Was like probably the economic driver of South Jersey, the area we're in right now. And it was like the main city. Unfortunately, it fell into tough times, like kind of like the deindustrialization that happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yep.
So you had a lot of exodus, and you had, suburban flight. People were just moving out and abandoning houses, and crime went up and all those bad things. However, in like 2010 timeframe, the state came in and they're like, we're going to invest. I think at the time there's about $3 billion was a projection between tax credits and direct investment into this area to kind of bring it back. And it made sense, right? Like if you look at it on a map, you have the nicer suburbs of South Jersey, like Cherry Hill, Collingswood, where we're now, Haddonfield. Like these are all like well-to-do areas. You have Philly, which is, as a city, fairly major city in the country. And in between, like the prime waterfront real estate, right, you have Camden, which everyone kind of forgot about. So it made sense. So it was kind of like, it was pretty cool because you could get a really high yield, like a cash yield, the 18% we're talking about. And you had the future potential of like, this could be something and appreciate. So it's kind of it was a double whammy where a lot of markets, when you're looking at real estate, people say you either go for cash flow or appreciation. It's rare that you can benefit from both. New York and LA and San Francisco, people call those appreciation markets because you're buying at 3, 4, or 5% cap rates. So you really can't make much on your money because that's what the mortgage costs. Markets that are like tertiary markets, like, random, part of, I don't know, Mississippi or whatever. Yeah. Biloxi, Mississippi. I don't know, maybe I'm making that up, but like, that's probably a cash flow market where you're probably gonna get an 8, 9%, 10%, 12% return on your real estate in a cap rate. But you're probably not going to get a lot of appreciation because there's not much going on there. So this was like, at the time, it was like, wow, you could get both.
Got it. Yeah. So jackpot.
Yeah, no, seriously. And it was funny. I mean, historically, I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, Camden was rated the most dangerous city in the country. So it'd come out, and I used to wear a suit and tie back then because I was like a broker. And would walk around and it was again, you don't know what you don't know. So thank God everything worked out and sitting here.
Right. So how'd you, I guess you're making good money from off-campus apartments, right? Yeah. How did, and you talked a little bit about, okay, the dream is to go on the investor side, but was it kind of scary to be like, okay, I'm giving up this kind of like cushy thing where I'm making a lot of money? Did you use a lot of that money to purchase your first property? We talked about not using outside equity capital. Yeah.
So, no, I wasn't worried because I knew like this was the path that I wanted to go, and it obviously comes with risk. So I was pretty I guess I had a good mindset for that. But, no, I was excited to, because I would see this, I would see when I was doing rentals, I'm like, wow, I wish the owner could have done this or that different. And it felt good to be able to finally make those decisions. But to be honest with you, I was still working as a broker in New York City until 2019, until I had about 100 properties. Okay. Because I needed that. I didn't take a penny out of this business until I still probably have put way more in than I've ever taken out personally. Got it. Way more than I've put in, except just keep reinvesting, keep doubling down. So yeah, I mean, honestly, the brokerage, that income was great because it allowed me to not draw on any resources and just keep putting in. So every year I put in more versus taking out. And when you're starting a business, I think that is, it's really underrated if you can find, people always say go all in, but sometimes it might be better the first couple of years. I think you were planning to do something similar where you have a steady income so you don't have to burden the business with your personal lifestyle needs. Got it. So yeah, it was frustrating. I remember brokerage is it's not a prestigious thing. For my undergrad, I don't think anyone else did real estate brokerage.
Right.
So it was frustrating. I would, be running around, making these, commissions and then buying real estate that was like 50 times what the commission was. So like it seemed it was a bit of dissonance, but like, I mean, I guess that's what it took at the time to you have to save up.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? So you kept the brokerage from going. Is that where you kind of learned all the cap rate stuff? Like anything about real estate? Or did that teaching yourself at the beginning, classes at NYU? How did you kind of make that gap?
I mean, to be frank with you, real estate it's a fairly simple business. There's not that much to it. Like there's YouTube's amazing. You probably find you probably spend 5-10 hours on YouTube and figure out like the fundamentals you need. You don't even need to.
Right. Once this goes up, other people will be looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like there's so much stuff you can learn. Actually, a channel, Ben Mala. I don't know if you've ever seen his videos, but he drops a lot of gems. I mean, they're funny videos, but check those out. But anyways, like I learned some in school. I think the biggest resource, and I'm like very grateful for that, was the real estate club in undergrad. And we'd get speakers in that would like tell you about what they do on a day-to-day basis. You get to visit developers' projects. Like that was way more valuable than I think the school. Right. And that's actually like one thing. I mean, people always donate money to schools and stuff, but like the clubs, I feel like are way more impactful than the school is. Right. In terms of like actually getting people interested and exposed to different industries. So like if you ever, when you donate back to your alma mater, you should donate to clubs instead. But anyways, it was that I think that kind of gave me like the backbone in real estate. And other than that, like the tough part is like the business I got into with Camden and like single family and small multifamily. It actually, the stuff you learn in school is way less valuable because what moves the needle on these types of projects is a lot about construction, because they're spending, this house we bought for $185,000 or something like that. And we're spending $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 in the construction. So the construction at $100,000 or hopefully less, we're spending in CapEx. Like if you don't know what you're doing, you could blow that budget. Right. So if you're you can do all the numbers and models and Excel that you learned at Wharton or wherever, but that's not going to help you if you do the wrong thing with the construction and you're 50% over budget. Like there's no model that's going to fix that problem for you. Yeah, no, I agree. It's the real world experience of it. You have to get in there and get your hands dirty. Yeah. And I probably stunted my growth a bit because when I was working, I was still living in New York, still working in the brokerage to make the money. So like to pay for everything. So I didn't really come here on site, come to these construction sites and learn about the different parts of construction until honestly 2 years ago. Oh, interesting. 2-3 years ago is when I finally was able to get a place down here and like really quit the brokerage and get like day to day here. Got it. Yeah. Okay. So can you talk about a little bit about that first store that you bought? Yeah. You're still in New York. You're coming in over I don't know. Talk about that whole process. Yes. So I bought. It was actually the first one when I started this business. It was with two of my like really good friends. One of them is still my best friend from undergrad. And we found this on auction.com and it was $33,750. I think it was the number. We put in like $15,000, rented for $1,375. And shockingly enough, that tenant is still with us. It's the longest, I guess, tenant in the portfolio. Wow. Good luck tenant. I know, you'll know. And she's never been late. So it's been, we've probably made that initial investment 10 times, 15 times over. At the time, that house in 2016, when we were done, was worth $95K. Now that house is worth like 160, 165. But anyways, after that first house, we realized this wasn't the business that my partners at the time wanted to be in. So I ended up buying them out of that house. Yeah. So after the first year, it was me solo, just, going after it. But so the first house I did in cash with my savings. And the next 4 houses also didn't cash my savings. So I had about $300,000 like saved up from undergrad. And I used from the brokerage business. And I used all of that for these first 5-6 houses. And then I convinced this like community banker who we still talk all the time. He actually wrote my letter of recommendation for business school to loan me the money. And he didn't know how old I was until like the day of closing. He saw my driver's license at the closing table. And he's like, wait. I was like 22, I think, at the time. And he's like, wow, I probably wouldn't have done this if I knew. Because they don't really ask you that. They ask you about your tax returns and financials and all that stuff. But yeah, anyways, I was able to fully cash out refi. So take all that equity that I put back and still own the properties. And like, I guess people, they call it BRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refi, like that BRRR. I don't know how many R's there are. And, you know, TikTok, people talk about it a lot, and YouTube, people talk about it a lot, but it actually works. I mean, I wouldn't think too much into the BRRR strategy. I would think more about the numbers, right? Like you have to buy at this price. You have to have this much of a spread because you know when you refinance it, you're going to get 75% or 70% or sometimes 80% of that value back. So you have to have that cushion there of value add that you did for you to be able to fully get all your equity back. Because if you start leaving equity in the deals, you can do the math. You'll have lost your nut. Your initial like 300 or whatever you're starting with, you would have that'll be all spent on the properties. But if you're able to get it to where you're able to get all that money put back in and hopefully some, then you can kind of create a snowball effect.
Got it. Yeah, and then that helps purchase the next properties, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So you got the first house with a couple of your buddies, you said. Yeah. And then what was the decision making in terms of buying them out? Was it they didn't like the construction aspect of it? It wasn't moving as fast as they thought. It wasn't sexy. Where was the
kind of combination of those things? I think one, it was a risk appetite. Like I had always, I guess, been comfortable with risk, like calculated risk. Like just kind of, I'm more of a person who's like, just do it, see what happens, ask for forgiveness later, right? So a lot of people aren't like that, and I think they were a little bit more risk sensitive. And also, it just kind of like people all say like partner, and partner. There's a lot of value you can get from that. But if you're three people coming from the same school with relatively the same skill sets and somewhat similar strengths, like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Like three people cannot afford to live off of one house. Right. Like, like you can do the math, right? So right now we have about 150 units and like probably another 100 in the pipeline between the different liens, investments and stuff. So to now support, to have that for three people, now you have to be 750, 700 units. Right. And that's a hell of a lot harder. There might not be that much supply in the market. Right. So unless you're really one hand kind of complements the other and you're like, I'll bring the deal sourcing, deal making, you do the construction, financing piece of it, and you do the construction and operations piece of it, or just even the construction piece of it, that is an accretive partnership. But if it's three of your buddies from business school that all have the same training, like, 1 + 1 sometimes doesn't equal 3. Makes sense. So, okay, I want to move on to kind of like the different sections I like to kind of organize these talks with. First of them is kind of like systems. So I just want to talk about how like your relationship with leverage, right? We talk about how you've done all this without raising outside equity capital. So you use your cash savings at the beginning, but then eventually you started using loans, right? And you said sometimes you do 85 loan to cost. So how did you get comfortable using leverage? I think when so many people's relationship with debt is student loans or credit card debt, like how did you get comfortable with that or learn about it? You talk about like this first community banker, et cetera. Sure. So it's all like calculated risk, and most real estate people love debt. Like debt is what fuels this business. If you can't do debt with it, then it'll be like a very, very, very long journey until you can wait for the properties to pay, like for new properties. But anyways, it's kind of part and parcel of the business. But leverage, I think it gets a bad rap because people will take leverage or debt to bet on something that's uncertain. And that's when you can get kind of like be in a bad position. Like hypothetically, let's say you are buying a property that you think, let's say in a single family context, you're buying it for $400,000. You think with a $200,000 renovation, it'll be worth $800,000, right? Numbers seem to work pretty well, right? You have a good spread in there. However, there's only one exit strategy there, and that's to sell it, right? Right. So there's only one exit, and you can't and you're going to have, the market is going to have to be pretty good for you to get that pop or that for you to get the 800K. So there, if you take full leverage out and you don't know the future, you could get in trouble, right? If the market changes and mortgage rates like they are rise and real estate goes down in price, then you could be underwater, right? Or if you go over budget on construction, you're underwater. But the stuff that we bought, or I bought, like, I always have a rule in real estate where 95% of stuff we buy is off market. it's not marketed through a real estate agent. You can't find it. Either we buy the debt directly and foreclose, or we buy it just off market through various channels. So the cushion of safety that we use is like, I always know that if I'm buying something, I could sell it the day I close for more than we paid.
Got it.
And usually substantially more than we paid. And I've done that before, like where, I know a project isn't for us because we have too much construction backlog, and we'll just buy it and sell it, a couple of weeks later after doing some basic cleaning and all that stuff. So that's what never scared me, is because I knew that even if I'm taking nowadays we'll take 100% loan to cost on a property in the acquisition phase, because I know that, God forbid, if we just can't get to it, we'll just sell it and make, 15, 20% hypothetically, or 5%, 10%, whatever the number is, and pay the loan back. You always have a margin of safety. And the second point of that is, God forbid the real estate market drops. We know that the rental, once your property's rented, that cash flow will be substantial enough to support new debt, or even sometimes the existing 10% mortgage, because the properties are cash flowing 10, 12, 13%. So God forbid, no terrible situation where you can't refinance or you can't sell it, you can still have a renter pay that mortgage.
Right.
So there's 3 or 4 different exit options you have, right? So that's why I think leverage is in certain such circumstances a very calculated risk.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Oh, yeah, super interesting. I think in the last 2 years, I think I've kind of woken up to the power of leverage when used correctly and with mitigated risk and stuff like that. So very cool stuff. So next is kind of like hiring. Aside from the housing or like building houses, you're also building a business, right? So we talked a lot about the people you're trying to hire and everything that. So can you talk about a little bit how that's going? Maybe how you use lessons or experiences from hiring your friends in college, how that's served you or not served you.
Sure.
In this new context when you're trying to grow this bigger business.
Sure. I mean, hiring is like basically like business is hiring, same one and the same, right? Because your business is the people that you hire effectively, right? However, a couple of years, like I think a year and a half ago, we had no full-time W-2 employees. Everything was contractor. I had a third-party property manager who then found third-party contractors who had third-party maintenance people to do everything. So I had 0 payroll. And the idea of payroll, as much as I love leverage, the idea of payroll scared the shit out of me, because you are then responsible for people, how they feed their families, and like if a hiccup happens in your business, like there's people that are counting on you. That was very scary, because in certain circumstances, like a risk-taking entrepreneur, you're like, if you go back to 0, like I started with almost nothing, so to go back there, it's fine.
Yeah, it's all on you.
Yeah, but like now, if you have all these people that you're just like, oh, by the way, we're out of business, and now you have like all these people that are relying on you. That's, I think, very scary. But anyways, it was time to grow up and build a business at some point, and hired our first person, and from there, now we I think had 23, 24 employees. We could afford to hire like 20 more people if we could. We just can't find them in our construction department and various different things. Do I know how to hire well? No, it's something I'm really struggling with. I wish I learned more about it. I guess the only way to learn is by doing. There's a couple books, like there's a system called top grading where you're like, you really look at a person's like past and you see like they went from this position to this position to this position. You try to see the progression, and then hopefully that tells you a bit about the person. Yeah. I think a lot of interviews are kind of BS. Like it's like kind of an extroversion test where like if you're an extroverted, gregarious, like fun person, like you just get ace the interview. Yeah. But if it's for like a bookkeeper role, like, does that really like, like in fact, if the person is like super like, extroverted, they might hate that role. So, one thing that I've heard and, the best thing you can do for hiring is to find someone that's already doing that at a competitor. Like that's like the gold standard, right? Because they're already operating, the company they're working for, and like kind of their performance, so you can kind of project it out. That's number 1. 2 would be like referrals, where someone like that's like, one of your current team members like knows them and they know they're good. That's like almost equivalent with hiring from a competitor. It's almost as good. Now the third, and this is where you do most of your hiring, where it's actually the least effective, is when you're just doing like the job posting or recruiting style hiring. And for that, I think, you really have to look at the person's career path and then be as objective as possible. Like, don't care if they're extroverted or they're super like in your face, and like find a test that you can give them. Like, if they're a bookkeeper, why don't you give them an hour-long test on your books and see what they can do with it? That way you have an objective measure, like how they can do, yeah. Versus someone who just aces the behavioral stuff and doesn't know how to do the work.
Right. So you're saying you could hire 20 more people. What are the positions you're looking to fill? Maybe they're watching this video in the future. Maybe.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome. So like 20 more people, like probably 15, 16 people would be in our construction team. As you see, we're in the middle of more than half, but construction site. We have 17 houses right now under construction, and a couple apartments. So like we could hire 20, 30, 40 people tomorrow to help get those across the finish line. And we have a consistent supply of product or property. So like a ton of demand in the construction side. Now, as far as like kind of the office work, you can always hire acquisitions people, like people to go out and find properties. Kind of that's what I do. And I'd love to we're working towards just creating a department that kind of gets me out of like that role and has a handful of people that are able to do that and hopefully do it better than I can. I'm sure they can. And then, just kind of bookkeeping, which when you start a business, if books are not your first priority and it catches up to you and you realize, oh shit, I really don't to button this up. So finance and bookkeeping is something that we're really trying to like get that functionality in-house on payroll. So we have like a consistent operating and reconciliation time frame. And then in property management, like we have one person property management right now. It's obviously not sustainable. We need more people in that department. So it's basically the last couple of years has been like creating kind of a corporate whatever chart and like filling out each department and figuring out what do people do in this job. Like, I don't know. I just got to try it out. Yeah. So that's been kind of the most fun, exciting, and also challenging parts of the small business journey.
Yeah. All right, so you're looking for a job.
Please.
I'll put Angad's contacts all over this video so you guys can reach out. But
that'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of talking to different people, like buying businesses and all that stuff that I've been kind of doing, they all say that the biggest challenge right now is hiring. So I think that's across different industries, across different things. So I think it's normal to be, struggling with that aspect of it. So, but
that's what we talked about, right? And that's what I love how you're doing the content is like, I feel like in this day and age, if you don't have unless you're like a Blackstone where like people are there's a million people that apply to your jobs or Google or Facebook or whatever. If you're a small business or startup, whatever, like to get really talented people to come join you, I think like doing what you're doing now is like.
It takes work.
Yeah. You got to put your name out there.
So I want to talk a little briefly about, you talked about creating an acquisitions department. So it looks like you're systematizing the business, right? Yeah. Which is exactly what you need to be doing. Can you talk a little bit more about the different sections of the business that you're trying to systematize?
Sure. Yeah. So we'd have an acquisitions team or acquisitions department where they're responsible for finding the properties. Like our business is quite simple. We buy real estate that is either distressed or undermanaged or has some sort of potential where we can value add. We do all the construction in-house, where we come in, do whatever work the property needs to, first of all, bring it up to code. And second, bring it to like what in real estate you call like the highest potential use, or like the best, you basically get the maximum market value on the rental side as you can from that piece of real estate. If that means going super high end, if it means going kind of more, basic with the finishes and more affordable, you do that. You pick kind of that set for each property. So that's acquisitions, construction, management. So management is the ongoing management of the properties, and it's dealing with tenant complaints, work orders, property registrations, all the stuff like on the administrative side. And then kind of that third or the fourth management / finance bit of it is dealing with kind of the balance sheet and like figuring out where the debt and equity, really it's only one equity source, but where the debt is coming from, and working on the refinancing and the term loans and the acquisition loans, and like making sure every bill is paid and all that stuff. Right. So that's kind of that fourth general management / finance bucket.
Got it. And at the beginning I assume you're pretty much doing everything except the construction yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, well, construction and management. Yeah.
Okay.
So the acquisitions and that other fourth bucket was me. But now hopefully we're going to get
slowly fire yourself from the business in this sense.
That's the hope. Yeah, that's the hope. And a really good book for this is it's called The E-Myth.
Okay.
I'm terrible with names. I forget the author's name, but it's super famous. Yeah, super famous book. I hope you have an Amazon affiliate link you can plug.
I'll plug
because it's a great book. Like it really talks about this, and I think one of the examples it talks about is there's like a person who's working at a bakery, and she was like an amazing baker, the best there is. And then she goes out and starts her own bake shop. You think, okay, it's going to be great. She's a great baker. But then she has to like find the space. She has to do the accounting. She has to do the hiring. She has to do the marketing. She has to do the taxes. Like there's a million things that are running the business, and she can't even bake anymore. So the business goes under. So what it talks about is like kind of like how as a business owner, like you can use your like unique vision or perspective to actually build a company where you have like people that are good at every various process doing that, and you just kind of focus on making the machine turn.
That's true. Awesome. So moving kind of quickly to like kind of tools. In one of your interviews, you said you just do everything on Google Drive. I think that probably was when you're a little less. So I kind of noticed you're working on with Asana now. I don't know, like how many different tools are you working with?
Yeah,
now?
It's a good find. So we're using Asana for like some of the construction management, just task management. We're looking at different like construction CRMs for like, or I don't know if they're called CRMs or whatever they're called, but like construction software to like run the whole process for construction. I think that's something that would help us a ton. But what's like mission critical right now is we use a property management software called AppFolio. And in that is our accounting. It's like the tenants, we have like an external portal through that software. The tenants can like pay their rent, see their utilities and all that stuff. Yeah. So that's super important. It also like tracks your leasing and like basically everything on the management side once the property is done runs through AppFolio. I still use Google Drive for a lot of like the back office stuff, like, like company manuals, like how to do this, like just spreadsheets that have a lot of data, like the tax lien business, we actually track pretty much all in spreadsheets. Because tax liens are such a niche thing, there really isn't like any great like software tool to like, track that. But yeah, I would say like, AppFolio, like if you're trying to get in real estate, find a good property management software. There's a million of them. Find the one that works for your kind of structure. Google Drive is an amazing place to like just store documents and like process guides and spreadsheets and stuff. And then Asana or hopefully some sort of like actual construction management software would be great.
Awesome. And then kind of move on to kind of mindsets before the final speed round. But we've been talking a lot about like the whole buying businesses stuff. I think when we first met, you kind of talked about one of your goals being to like create something that IPOs eventually. Can you talk about kind of where your mindset is now going forward in terms of you're building this business? Eventually, I'm sure it'll grow to wherever you want it to be. Your goal was how many doors or something like that?
So, I mean, I was like kind of raised a goal. So initially it was 100 doors, and 100 doors was like, because once you have 100 doors, you can basically have enough like whatever free cash flow to like not have to worry about like your current income. And then now that I've kind of gotten really in the swing of things, I realized like you need about 250 doors, doors meaning units, to support a good management team. Where you can have, the adequate number of maintenance techs, you can have the adequate number of people in property management, like a general manager. Yeah, the whole machine. Because these are salaries, right? Yep. So like the way you calculate in real estate is like you have an expense line item for management and operations, right? So, in SFR, single family rental, like stuff we do, it's a little higher. It's like 7-8%. So you basically calculate, okay, what's my ideal payroll look like? How is everyone going to, like, how can you pay people well to do what they're good at? Like, how many people do you need? What does that payroll cost? Okay. Figure that number out, figure out that's 8% of what larger number. And that's the revenue target you need. Figure out how much your average rent is, and I'll tell you how many doors you need. Got it. Roughly, we're at a clip now where I think 250 is like the minimum to hit that kind of like steady state where you can have your internal management supported well
and all, working fully. All right. So let's say 6 months, a year from now, however long it takes to get those 250 doors, you hit that. What are you thinking is next, or what are you kind of building for in the future? Are you looking to kind of moving away from real estate into buying businesses? Are you still looking to build a sort of Cooper Acquisitions up to a point where you can IPO it? What's kind of your thought process?
So I don't think this business will ever get to the scale of a public company. So we're like regionally focused. We're doing like a small, relatively dollar amount of deals. But I think this could be a great business as a springboard. And also for like the team members, like I think if we can find, and we have a lot of great people that are like really dedicated to it and are talented, like this could be an amazing opportunity for them because so few people are doing this at scale in this market and other markets around the country. So I don't know exactly how big this can get. I hope it gets pretty big. But my personal goal is to learn from this business, like how to build the systems and processes and hiring, learn that on the ground here, doing something I kind of know the in and out of. Like I know I've built 5-6 years of specific knowledge on this type of stuff. So for me to try to build or hopefully buy and then build a business in an industry I know nothing about, I kind of want to use the next year to learn that aspect and then take a gamble on something that's like kind of a new industry. I think I really do want to buy a business, hopefully in the next like 18 months or start even looking for a business. But my first goal is like to get the systems and processes down pat here. And then learning just how to systematize and operationalize a business. I think you could use that and just use that playbook in the different companies you try to buy. Right. But I don't think real estate, I don't want to really do anything real estate out of Cooper Acquisitions because I think that we have a strong advantage in the market that we play in. So to go and try to build that up somewhere else in a different market would take a long time. And ideally, you would do that at a market cycle inflection. Because right now we're at kind of the historical highest point ever of real estate. But listen, if you built up a good portfolio and you have kind of that, edge in a market, even though the prices are super high, you can still find good deals, right? Yeah. But to do that from scratch anywhere else, I don't think you'll be able to make it unless you have some sort of edge. Now, I would love to buy some sort of more capital or asset light business like we've talked about. That would be great. But for now, the sole focus is just getting the business like systematized.
Got it. Yeah. I'm sure, as everyone said, I'm sure it'll all be successful. It's just a matter of time and whatnot. So very excited to see where that takes you and where you take all these businesses. So very cool stuff. So kind of moving on to the speed round before we kind of close things out, I'm going to ask you some quick questions. Ideally, you answer them as quickly as possible. If you want to give a little more color around any of them, feel free to do so.
Sure.
But they're all kind of different topics. So we'll jump all over the place. So number one, what purchase of $100 or less has had the most impact on you this last year? It could be a little more over a year or whatever, but.
Ooh, this last year. Okay. So I'll just say that book. E-Myth. Okay. I mean, that was probably 3-4 years ago when I got that. But it's been a great tool to learn from.
Yeah, it's like $12.
$12, Audible. You should plug that. You should get an affiliate link there.
Working on that. All right, cool. So that's on the cheap side. Going to the more expensive side. What do you kind of spoil yourself with? What is something that you have no budget on that you'll spend any amount of money on?
Yeah, I have bad. What is it called? I love nice things, but that's what you work for, right? So love cars. My favorite thing to do on the weekends is golf. I used to play competitively in high school. So would join the country club there and play, when I can. And so I guess cars and golf are probably my two good vices.
Stuff. Yeah,
they're not cheap.
what are the clubs you got in your back? The car right now?
I'm actually going to change them up, but I have a Callaway driver and woods and stuff, the Epic Flash, I think it's called, and TaylorMade Sims. But I bought those 2 years ago, and I've gotten a little bit better.
So now you're ready for a little upgrade?
Want something a little bit more for a better player. But yeah, love golf.
All right, so what do you believe in that others think is insane?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I guess just risk in general, calculated risk. Right. So some people are how can you sleep at night knowing you owe whatever X, millions of dollars in debt? And, I've never really been and bothered by it.
Got it. All right. So what's something that you've changed your mind on?
I guess I've changed my mind on, like, I believe that in what's it called? Empowering people to do stuff, right? Delegation. That's the word I was looking for. But now I realize that you really have to, if you're an entrepreneur, like you have to, unless you're hiring someone who has like a decade, 15, 20, 30 years of experience in a specific domain. And if you're starting a business, you probably can't afford that person. You have to do it once yourself and then create a very clear guide and a very clear process for someone to do it versus when I was like starting out, I just assumed like, okay, here's just go do it, figure it out. Like if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. That was kind of my saying, but now I realized that you should probably,
a little training, a little guidance,
and you should figure out what you need first and how to do it before you just throw it at someone.
Got it. All right. So when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind?
That's a really good question. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but like I have a lot of like business idols, but I mean, right now you could say Elon Musk because like this guy's like operating on all cylinders. But there's been a few people that I've like kind of tracked like their path and their career. And like one of the ones that inspired me to go to business school was actually a guy, Tom Gores. I've never met him, but he's like a private equity, multi-billionaire. And he started out, like he grew up in the Midwest from an immigrant family. So I kind of felt that. And what I loved about his story is he didn't go to like a fancy school. He went to Michigan State or something like that.
Okay.
And just at age 30 moves out to LA and starts buying businesses. And 9 years later is like a billionaire.
Right.
In 9 years was able to scale up.
That's crazy.
So, I get super inspired by love like guys like Elon Musk. I realize like personally, I just don't have that that visionary. I don't really see the world that differently than other people where someone like him does. But like in terms of just grinding it out and do it like, operating businesses or buying businesses, I feel like Tom Gores with Platinum Equity is probably
got it. Legend
to look up to. Yeah.
All right. So what's the worst advice you hear being thrown around?
I think probably people like saying, you need to raise money or like do something huge or like wait until you have a partner or like all of those things where like people are telling you to slow down or stop doing something because of some other reason. I feel like you could just like, you shouldn't let the world tell you, like you should figure something out, try a business out, do it as cheaply and as quickly as possible. And now if your customers say no and you just really fail, then okay, then maybe it's a no. And then try again maybe. But like don't let someone tell you can't like do something for XYZ reason or like stop yourself from doing something for some reason. So
I guess maybe kind of bled into there, but like, so what's the advice? I mean, you're still super on the young side. So the question's usually, what do you ask your 20-year-old self? So kind of going back to like maybe that 18-year-old starting off-campus apartments, right? So what would you tell 18-year-old Angad?
Buy more real estate. No, I mean, I guess I couldn't. I literally spent every penny. I mean, there's so many times over the last couple of years, especially last 3-4 years ago, where we were down, had like $1,000 left in the account. I had like 2 days or a day's worth of cash flow, like right before a refi was about to close, right before we were about to sell a property. So like I think I fired on all cylinders in terms of that, as far as that goes. But I guess just trying to make more good friendships. I think in undergrad I really didn't. I was just focused on like grinding it out, getting that business off the ground, and using that money to buy real estate. That I was just like kind of closed off. It's kind of that's why I went to business school. Right.
Yeah, and I think you did a good job there, where you were able to meet a bunch of people. So you did a good job there.
Like you, that's a cool thing about. I don't know if the audience is like a business school audience, but like your program that you were in, like Lauder, where like you have like a cohort of 80 people, and everyone's name. And that's
definitely helpful. All right, well, so kind of last questions is, if we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, beer, wine, whatever you want, what are we celebrating?
Wow, that's a good question. I guess really be celebrating having clear department heads, clear KPIs, and clear like operating financials that are like easy reporting, and you can figure out what's going on in your business without actually being there.
All right.
I think like that's I never, as of like after hitting that 100 house door, ever since then, I've never set a goal on like numbers. Like I don't care about like, you shouldn't like make a goal about money or like number of doors or anything.
Yeah.
Like, cause if you build the right machine,
right,
the machine will figure that out for you.
The goal is the machine, goal is the systems, right?
The goal is the team, the company, the processes. Let that be the goal, and then the doors,
everything
money,
else will follow.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. And kind of like, I guess, last thing, what else do you want to leave for the audience, or is there a call to action? You want more people, or you want to get that hiring speech again?
Watch more of Patrick's videos. He's putting a lot of good content out here. But no, I think if you're interested in real estate, feel free to shoot me an email. I think Patrick will put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I can put whatever you want in the
yeah. And we're hiring for acquisitions roles, and that's something that at a young age you can really, without any experience, you can do well at. Like we had an intern last summer, and it was a 2.5 month internship. First month and a half did 0 deals. Was grinding it out every day, following our process. And last month closed 2 deals. Awesome. And okay, 2 deals doesn't sound like a lot, but so he bought a single family house.
Yeah.
We had a nice margin on that. And then he bought a 6-unit building. That's been one of the most profitable deals we've done in the last 6 years. And that was a kid who's, I think, 19, 18 years old.
Right.
He since went, his dream is to, work like in New York finance. He's a Wharton undergrad, and he, has a really nice internship lined up this summer. And the next summer he's working at one of the biggest real estate funds and the most prestigious and hard to get jobs. So like, I think it's really cool. And not to take too much credit, but he said like what he learned and kind of what he talked about during his interviews, and it said helped him. So
for sure.
That would be really
cool. If he was a little close, please. Yeah.
It would be really cool to build a company with Cooper Square where we can like bring, people in and like help their careers. That would be
for sure. A little springboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Angad, thank you. You're a legend.
Patrick,
Appreciate
thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and
I'll put all his contact info in the descriptions below. And again, thank you much for watching.